Hi there. Today we're going to look at a couple of similar sounding and similar meaning words in Esperanto, and I'm going to show you how you can tell them apart. I have a friend named Jake, and one of the ways that he makes money is he donates, or more accurately sells, a certain material that only his half of the population produces. He is so popular at the clinic where he sells that material that they gave him a coffee mug that says, "Get a load of this guy." And so today I'm going to tell you how to get a load of Esperanto. What are the words for loading something? To load something. What is a load, a burden, a shipment, a cargo, a payload? What are the words we use for that? Well, we have two words that are usually used in those scenarios. One is ŝargi, the other is ŝarĝo. So ŝargi is primarily a verb that you could make a noun out of. We'll talk more about that in a moment. And then ŝarĝo is at its core a noun that can be made into a verb. So think of ŝarĝo as primarily being a noun, and ŝarĝo means a burden, a load, a payload, goods or wares that are being shipped or transported somewhere else. That's ŝarĝo, okay? But you can make ŝarĝo into a verb, ŝargi. And that verb has one of three main meanings. It can mean to load something up in order to take it somewhere, for transport or conveyance. It could mean to fill something up to capacity, or it can mean to impose a burden onto someone else. For example, mi ŝarĝis la kamionon per ligno. I loaded up the truck with wood. Note that kamiono, you could also call that a ŝarĝaŭto, literally a load or loading vehicle. So that's loading something up to take it somewhere. That's the most common usage of this verb. But you could also just load something up. You could say, "Oh man, I'm so stuffed. I'm loaded here. Oh man, oh man." Loaded cheesy bread, let's say. How about mi ŝarĝis breton per libroj? I loaded up a shelf with books. Now, they're not going anywhere. I'm not transporting them anywhere. I'm just packing the thing out. All right? And then la reĝo ŝarĝis la popolon per pezaj impostoj. The king burdened his people, the people, with heavy taxes. He gave them a load or burden that they now have to deal with. So there's a few different ways that this verb could be used, but the primary one is putting things into something to take them somewhere else, okay? And so the main usage of ŝargi is talking about putting things in a vehicle to take it somewhere. So think of the two hats, the ŝo and ĝo, the S and the G with the hats over them, as representing the two wheel wells, the front pair of wheels and the back pair of wheels of a vehicle. Beep, beep, as it drives along with all that stuff loaded inside of it. So ŝargi, okay, we're packing it up for transport here. You could also think of, all right, we're loading up a Jeep, and so use that soft G, ŝargi, for putting it into a Jeep and beep, beep, taking it off down the road. And in contrast to ŝargi, we have the word ŝargi. What does ŝargi mean? It also means to load, but not just to load up and haul somewhere. No, it means to load something into place or into another apparatus in order to enable that apparatus to function or to be utilized. Almost every instance you'll find in 19th and 20th century Esperanto literature of ŝargi is going to be about a gun. Okay, because usually it's, make ready or load, tear off the thing, pour the gunpowder into the thing, all right, get the flintlock musket ready to strike, and then you're loading up the explosives so that a gun is enabled for use. Guns don't do much until they have a charge, a load in there, and then you can utilize them. All right, so you'd say ready, aim, fire would be ŝargu. All right, get the gun all ready. Celu. All right, aiming it, all right, and then pafu, firing it. The first time I ever worked on a big budget film or TV show thing was the show Turn Washington's Spies. I was an extra on that. At first, I ended up getting a speaking role. I worked as a stand-in. I did a lot of different jobs on that show, but the first thing was I played a redcoat in the pilot. And the first week that they brought us out there, they paid for us to have training. We did marching formations, and they had us practice loading flintlock muskets and firing them in formation over each other's shoulders, and then ducking and all that, and then marching around. It was so cool. It was like going to summer camp, and they're feeding us and paying us to learn all this stuff. And we're really firing that. We're firing cannons and doing all this cool stuff. So I learned how to actually make ready and load up a flintlock musket for a shoot there. So yes, in older literature, ŝargi, you're probably talking about a gun. But in the 21st century, we're more likely to use ŝargi when talking about making ready or loading up a battery for a device with electricity. So that's the word you would use for charging your phone. You might say, "Atendu mi ankoraŭ ŝargas mian poŝtelefonon." Oh, wait up, I'm still charging or loading up with electricity my pocket phone, my cell phone, okay? La baterio por mia kamerao jam ŝargiĝis. The battery for my camera already got charged up, okay? Tiu videoludo ofte ke longe devas ŝargiĝi. What does that mean? That video game often, and for a very long chunk of time, has to load up. So that is the word we use when we're talking about loading a new level in a video game. You don't say plenigi or plenumi or any like fill up with information and data. No, it could have gone that way, but in this language, we say ŝargi or ŝargiĝi when we're talking about loading the data in order to play a level or to use a level of a video game. All right, so you might also use that as more of a 21st century usage of ŝargi. Now, for this word, think of the single-hatted letter, the sho there at the beginning of the word, as representing a charging device. The two prongs of a charger, like a little hat there. We're going to plug that into the wall so we can charge our battery or charge our phone. So ŝarĝi has two because it's beep beep, it's a car moving along. But ŝargi only has one because we're plugging something into the wall so we can charge it or load it up with electricity. Another thing you can remember is, most of the time, ŝargi has to do with guns. ŝargi, the hard G, is for guns. That's right, loading a gun to fire it. Historically, that's often the case, even though you could be talking about loading a printer with ink or a Game Boy with a game cartridge. Any number of other usages are also possible. Another thing you could do is go, okay, ŝargi is when you're loading something to make it good to go. Okay, now that I've loaded that, you could say ink, for example. You could say, okay, I loaded ink into the printer, and you'd say ŝargi there. But you'd say, oh yes, we've got 10 more boxes of ink out in the truck outside. Well, in that case, we're talking about ŝargi or ŝarĝo, when it's loaded just to be brought somewhere. It's not enabling the use of a device out there, whereas it is when we use it in here. Note that both ŝarĝi and ŝargi are active transitive verbs. People ŝargas and ŝarĝas aferojn. People do the active action of loading in both situations, whereas the objects that are getting loaded up, they ŝargiĝi or ŝargiĝi. Okay, so remember who does what. Mi pensas ke mi sufiĉe jam ŝarĝis viajn mensojn por hodiaŭ. I think that I've already sufficiently loaded up your minds for today. So I'll let you just practice now using ŝargi and ŝarĝi in some sentences. Thank you so much for watching and have a wonderful day.
Thank you, patrons, for making this video possible.